So let's spend a little time talking about competition, political, legal, and regulatory macro factors that affect marketing and businesses in general. First, a little bit about competition. As you recall, we actually have a couple of lectures on defining the competition and evaluating the competition. From an economic standpoint, of course, the idea is that there are four kinds of competitive marketplaces: pure competition, monopolistic competition, oligopolies, and pure monopolies. Of course, a pure monopoly being a situation where there is only one company or one organization supplying products. Here in Southern Nevada, an example of a pure monopolist operation would be the Southwest Gas or NV Energy. There are also oligopolies. This, of course, is a competitive environment that has 3 or 4 companies or maybe 5 companies that are all the major players. An example here, of course, tends to be things like cell phone suppliers. There is this notion of monopolistic competition where there is a limited number of competitors, maybe more than 5, but certainly not pure competition. And of course, pure competition is when there's lots of competitors willing to compete with each other in a marketplace. Some issues about technological advances. Well, of course, technological advances create new forms of competition. Retailers of today have to compete against not only other retailers in the same area, in the same geographic area, they have to compete with online retailers. This obviously is a new form of competition that has been developed as a result of the invention and proliferation of the internet and e-commerce. Now, of course, we have something called m-commerce, which, of course, is mobile commerce, people buying things on their cell phone. We need to understand that there's an accelerating rate of technological change. Changes in the technology world seem to be spinning almost out of control. The technological advances and the fast pace of technology change means that an organization has to be on their toes, have to be watching what technology is emerging, and be thinking about how that will impact their business so that they can adapt to those changes as they come along. Of course, technological changes have created unlimited innovation opportunities, but there is, of course, the issue with technology, especially with the internet. There are issues of privacy and security. The political and legal environment, of course, this refers to such things as legislation regulating business. In many places, and in fact, I was just in New York, and New York has a ban. New York City has a ban on Walmarts, and they have once again reaffirmed that they will not let any of the big box Walmart stores into the 5 boroughs. There is this issue of protectionism. That is, the federal government often creates laws to protect individual consumers. There's probably more enforcement than ever before on some of these things, but there are a lot of public interest groups, and so everybody has a lobbyist either in Washington, D.C., at the state government or in the local government to try to get the political and legal environment to shift in their direction. Some regulatory forces that you ought to be familiar with. In the early years of the United States, as we became an industrialized nation, there was a legislation that was focused on protecting individual levels of competition, antitrust legislation. A little later on, the legislation became more about protecting companies' properties. There are patent laws, copyright laws, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1998 that says that digital content can be copyrighted and in some cases patented. And of course, changes now in nutritional labeling, which is something that was really has evolved over the last 20 years or so. There is regulatory legislation on the Consumer Product Safety Act of 1972. The Customer Product and Safety Commission was established, and this whole idea of protecting consumers. The state of Nevada has a consumer protection agency where if you think a company has treated you wrongly, they are the state organization that you would contact to see if you can get some relief. There is distribution-related legislation, things like requirement contracts, exclusive dealing, exclusive territorial distributions, and tying arrangements. Most of these things have been deemed to be anti-competitive. That is, they reduce the level of competition. So in many cases, there are laws limiting or eliminating these sorts of arrangements altogether. There are new advertising and promotion related legislations going all the way back to the FTC Act of 1914. But today we have things like the Do Not Call Registry, the Can Spam Act of 2004, and of course self-control through self-regulation. Thinking then about the business environment is changing also. Communication and situation tools have evolved dramatically. The way that we communicate with customers has changed in marketing dramatically. There was much less money spent on traditional advertising, television, radio, magazines, newspapers, and much more now being spent on what we used to refer to as non-traditional advertising, more digitally based advertising. The venture capital availability has gone down, and as a result, you see a lot more things like crowdfunding for organizations. There is this issue about the talent and labor pool, and one of the reasons that you're in school is to build a skill set that will give you talents that will make you employable for the rest of your life. There is the issue, of course, of real estate and facilities, and one of the questions, of course, is real estate as important today as it used to be given the advent of the web? There is also the issue of transportation. You know that the federal government is talking about infrastructure bills that are designed to improve not only the air transportation, but rail and auto transportation by improving and rebuilding our roads and bridges, and perhaps even rebuilding our railway system. And of course, the last issue about the business environment is the total cost of doing business. With more and more government regulations and more taxes, businesses find that the cost of doing business continues to go up. And of course, the only way a business can be successful is to somehow pass those costs on to the consumer.